Well, hello. Before I get started on today's podcast episode, I wanted to let you know about probably my all-time favourite thing to do, and that is host my Impact Club. The Impact Club is for humble leaders, corporate hippies, business owners, public servants, people who want to make a bigger impact in their world, but they just need a little bit of support. In fact, I kind of think that the Impact Club is to your mental, spiritual, and emotional well-being what going to the gym and eating good food is to your physical well-being. So if you're working to make a dent, if you're driven to make impact, then the Impact Club is your community, is your space where you get to be supported to do just that. You can find out all about the Impact Club by heading to impactfulpresenters.com and clicking on the For Individuals menu item, or just check the show notes, check the link in the show notes below. Now that is all said, welcome. Welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson, the show where I, Kat, teach you how to show up, how to speak up, how to speak with authority, authenticity, confidence, and impact so you can make your desired dent in the universe. And today we're getting really tactical, really practical. I'm talking about lecterns, unfamiliar stages, and microphones. So Shanae asked this fantastic question in a community that we're both a member of. She said, I'd love to hear your take on lecterns. What are the pros? What are the cons? How do you best use them? And what do you do if the mic you end up with, the microphone that you end up with at an event, isn't what you're used to? Such a deliciously tactical topic. Thank you, Shanae, for asking the question. So before I dive into those details, first of all, what I want to say, when you are speaking at an event, when you are rocking up to speak on somebody else's stage, preparation prevents piss poor performance. That saying is so true. Preparation prevents piss poor performance. And so the first thing, the first thing I want to say is always ask about the stage setup beforehand. Whether you have pitched yourself to speak at an event, we were talking about that just in last week's episode, or whether you have been invited to speak, whether you are part of a conference, ask. Ask what the stage setup is first. Now, for some events, you will be able to request your preferred setup. You'll be able to request whether you have a lectern, you don't have a lectern, what kind of microphone you want, whether you don't, whether you have a handheld, whether you have a headset, whether you have a lapel. Other times you will just have to deal with what you're given, but you want to know first. So always ask what the setup is. Now, when it comes, I'm going to talk about lecterns first, and then we'll talk about microphones, and then we'll talk about some other hot tips for preparing for speaking at an unfamiliar stage. When it comes to lecterns, personally, I hate them. I hate speaking at a lectern because I actually do my best work moving. I do my best work moving and taking up the whole stage. However, I appreciate that that is not true for everyone, and you might actually find a lectern more comfortable. So how do you know? If you've never done it before, well, how do you think? Like, do you think, do your best ideas come to you while you're walking, or do you think better standing still? That can be a bit of an insight into whether you'd really like a lectern or whether you'd prefer to be a little bit more free-flowing. One of the benefits of a lectern, though, is it does give you somewhere to put your notes so your hands are free. Most of the time, if you've got a lectern, there'll also be a microphone stand, and so both hands are free. You've got your notes on the lectern, you've got a clicker perhaps either on the lectern or in a free hand, and so it makes for a really easy stage presence, if you like. If you are using a lectern, there's a few things to be aware of. One, the audience can only see the top half of your body. That might be fine if you're a relatively What's the word? Non-expressive body language person. But for someone like me who speaks with her hands, that's actually really challenging. And so if you are speaking from behind a lectern, you want to be extra animated. You want to bring your hands up above your shoulders and really amplify your facial expressions so you don't get lost behind the lectern. The other thing to be aware of is if you are vertically challenged or not as tall as others, you want to check out the lectern first to make sure that you can actually be seen. That you can actually be seen. And if you are someone who is a little bit too short for the lectern, you want to have an alternative lined up beforehand. How do you know? Well, again, this is why you want to ask what the setup is beforehand. And ideally, you want to arrive early enough that you can have a full walkthrough, not necessarily deliver your whole presentation, but you want to be able to stand on the stage and feel out your setup before you actually get started. If you think that you are not someone who likes using a lectern, if you would prefer not to use a lectern, what you need to figure out is, well, how will you manage your notes, your clicker, and a handheld microphone? So sometimes people try to memorize their speeches. I'm not a fan of that because if you lose your spot in your memorized script, it can really throw you. So what can you do with your notes? Sometimes if the stage setup is such, I will leave my notes on the lectern and just keep moving back to the lectern to see my next point. Alternatively, you can use palm cards and just have, a handful of notes just sitting in the palm of your hand. I've also been known to use a binder or a portfolio to balance all of my notes kind of in the crook of my arm. But that tends to only work if I'm either not using a clicker or if I'm using a headset microphone, because I've only got two hands and therefore I need to be really clear about how I'm going to hold all of the things: microphone, notes, and PowerPoint clicker. So just get really clear on one, what's your preference? And then two, if you're not using a lectern, how do you need the stage to be set up in a way that supports you to deliver best? Now, most event organizers want you to be amazing. And so they will work with you to set up the stage in a way that works for you. Don't be afraid of asking. Now, on to microphones. Well, again, if you know, request your preferred microphone. I love a headset microphone, or as I like to call them, the Madonna microphone, because it looks like I could dance and sing all at the same time. A headset microphone, though, is often quite expensive. And if you're speaking at a smaller community event, a chamber of commerce, they're not going to have the budget or the gear. They're not bringing in extra gear just for your presentation. So sometimes it will be a fixed microphone or it'll be a handheld. Again, knowing that in advance helps me think about, well, how am I going to manage my notes? How am I going to manage my clicker? How do I actually set it all up? One of the follow-up questions that Shanae asked in this conversation thread was, what happens if I rock up assuming or guessing that it's going to be a handheld, but then I'm given a headset mic and it feels really odd? Because if you've never worn a headset microphone, it can feel a little uncomfortable. And the little microphone piece, the part that you actually speak into, it sits very close to your cheek. And so it can feel quite odd if you're not used to it. Couple of things to know about that. If you are using a headset microphone, chances are there is an AV person on site, an audiovisual person on site who is running things, because it's a specialized piece of gear. Work with your AV person until it feels good on your head. They will adjust it, and get them to adjust it, because they are really finicky pieces of kit. But what you want to do, again, is arrive early so you can do a proper sound check with the gear. And as they're fitting you, as they're hooking it over your ears, as they're adjusting it around the back of your head, as they're adjusting where the microphone is next to your mouth, you can tell them, no, I don't like how it feels behind my head. I don't like how it feels on my cheek. And they will adjust it for you. Then you want to test it on stage with volume, because it does sound different talking into a headset microphone than into a handheld. And so you and the AV guy need to understand how you work with that particular gear. Now, sometimes you don't get a choice and you just need to deal. So, again, this is why it's really, 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 really important to show up early and get a feel for it. You don't want to be feeling out your gear, you don't want to be feeling out your stage as you're starting your presentation. So, again, check with your organizer, with the event organizer. When can I get into the room to do an AV check and basically test out the stage? It will either be in the break before you go on, sometimes it's the night before, sometimes it's the morning. This can make for a longer day than you had anticipated, but far out, it is worth the time to get a feel for it. I distinctly remember the first time I ever spoke, and I didn't do this. I didn't. I'd rocked up to this event. It was my first ever paid keynote event, and it was at the Hilton Ballroom here in Brisbane. So it was an audience of about 1,000 people. And what I wasn't prepared for was the screen behind me. It was a massive, and I mean massive, screen that they were projecting me onto. They had a camera and they were following me on the stage, not just my slides. That was confronting. And every time I kind of turned to see whether my slides had clicked over, I saw this great big larger than life image of myself. So always, always ask for a quick run through before you get to start. Now, some other things that you do in this little run through. Absolutely, it's the mic check. It's the sound check with your AV guy. It's also where are you putting your notes and how are you setting everything up so you can access them? How do you hold the clicker? How do you hold the microphone if it's a handheld? How do you hold your notes? This one is one that we often forget. Ask the AV person to also light the room as it's going to be in session, because the spotlights can be quite off-putting. Particularly if you're someone who is used to engaging with a crowd. Oftentimes in a large conference, the lights will be down so low and the spotlight's on you that you actually can't see the audience. And just speaking from experience, sometimes the spotlights can be so bright that it can actually be hard to read your notes, particularly if you've got them in plastic sleeves. So, again, doing all of this before you actually start is a really powerful way to calm your nerves and get yourself set, get yourself stage ready, if you like. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be able to get this feel for the stage until the day of the event. But the more you know about how the stage is going to be set up and the more you know about the microphone that you're going to use, the more that can inform how you actually prepare your speaker notes. I will not, for example, prepare full notes or my usual post-it notes if I know that I've got a massive stage and I'm not going to be near the lectern. Instead, I won't memorize it, but I'll actually create subheadings in my mind that keep me on track. Or I'll hold a run sheet in front of me if I'm emceeing to keep me going, and I'll prepare mentally what I'm going to say against each point. I feel like there was something else, but it's gone. A reminder though, you can request your preferred microphone. If you're not a fan of the headset microphone, ask for a handheld. If you would prefer a lapel, ask for a lapel. That was the other thing that I wanted to say. I know that many of you listening are women. Here's the thing about headset microphones and lapel microphones. You need somewhere to put the battery pack. I reckon the reason I'm laughing is because the number of times I've kind of forgotten that when I've chosen my outfit and then rocked up and the AV guys go, do you have a belt? Do you have a waistband? Are you wearing a skirt? And I'm like, man. And so they have to fish around and put the mic pack on the back of my bra. Just again, I feel like I've said again about 1,000 times this particular episode. Preparation prevents poor performance. Knowing what mic you're going to use. If you're going to use a headset mic or a lapel mic, you need to dress for that. Lapel mics need a little bit of rigidity in your top. If you're wearing a I don't know, a soft satin or silk top, then the lapel mic clip doesn't have enough substance to hang and sit in place. If you're using a lapel mic, you don't want to be wearing noisy, clunky jewelry. If you're wearing a headset mic, you don't want to have swinging earrings. There's all these little things that you need to think through, and you can't think through them until you know what it is that you're using. So ask for what you want, or ask what is going to be given to you, and then you can prep everything, all the way from outfit all the way through to notes, accordingly. Now, if you've got a question like Shanae had, I mean, how juicy was that? And I would never have thought to talk about that level of tactical response or tactical preparation. So if you have a question that you would like me to answer on an upcoming episode, please ask. You can do that either here if you're listening on Spotify, just leave a comment. Leaving comments, by the way, really help to get this podcast heard by other like-minded, impact-minded leaders. So please leave a comment. If you've got a question, leave a comment. If you just want to say that was a great episode, leave a comment. If you're listening on a platform that doesn't have comments feature, then ask on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and I will share my links to both of those profiles in the show notes. Also, a reminder too that if you would like more support, if you feel like you would benefit from from having a hug, a mental and emotional hug wrapped around you as you strive to make a bigger impact in your world, as you strive to craft your message, your strategy, your influence. And if you just need people to bounce ideas, then check out the Impact Club. It really is just one of the most gorgeous places on earth for people like you and people like me, corporate hippies who are striving to just make a little dent in the universe. So the link for that is also in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in. It's been lovely to spend time with you. I look forward to seeing you again next week for another episode of Speaking with Confidence. Next week, we're talking about how personal is too personal and how to be engaging in your speeches. Until then, here's to confidence and here's to impact. I'll see you soon.